Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. Now, a while ago I did a session about watering my pots and actually showing the pots actually being watered. Yesterday I did watering the mounts and talked about setting up the feed and about my minimum temperatures and how I look after my temperatures and everything. So all that's left are what I call the bucket dunkers, which during the winter consists of 3 Vandas, my Rhyncho Stylus and my Bangkok Sunset. I forgot what that is. Rhyncho Reedies, I think that is. It's got Rhyncho in it anyway, whatever a Rhyncho is. But what I haven't done is the Vanda theory. Okay, so first of all we have what I call a Vanda bucket, and the 2 containers in there at the moment are just hot tap water. The idea being that certainly in the winter, overnight, the water in that bucket chills down quite dramatically, and I don't want to start putting plant roots in freezing cold water. That does them no good at all. That is a real shock to the system. So prior to putting any plants in there, I warm it up. So that's just hot tap water. I just put those in there, and every now and again I give it a swirl round to make sure, excuse the helicopter, I think they're doing a training session today. He's been over about 4 times this morning, and it's one of the big ones. So it doesn't take long to go over, that's the good bit. So gradually that disperses its heat from the containers into the bucket and warms the water up. And once that's actually finished, actually I can do the talking about it now. The methodology is geared up to the RO unit. When I get the RO unit out, I empty whatever's in there down the sink and clean it out and use that to capture the RO water. And then as it gets full, I use a jug to tip that into my containers. I've got 3 5-litre containers and probably about 10 of these that I use. These are milk bottles basically, so they're readily available to have milk in my coffee. And this time of year I've got about 10, I think, something like that. Come the summer months, the number of these will go up, or I'll just run out too quickly. I don't want to be getting the RO unit out day in, day out. Therein lies the reason I share water. So that water gets changed when I need some more RO water, yeah? And obviously at first, when I bring that back in, it's just pure RO water. And at that point, all the plants that normally get watered in there get a flush. So they get some nice clean water. They might get 2. Depends how I feel and whether I can be bothered to mix up some feed second time round. But today they had their flush, that water was recently changed, so today I've got to mix in some feed. Now that bucket this time of year gets parts per million around the 200 mark, and obviously that's going to sit in that bucket until I change the water again, so I can't vary the feed for those that go in there. So the way I get round that is a couple of days before I'm due to change that water, that's the point I can alter what's in there, so that the plants that go in there only get that once. So they get their regular feed, yeah, they get a flush every time I change the water, and then as I come towards the end and I'm due a water change, I could add some seaweed in and give them a seaweed feed for just that once, and then I'm going to change the water again. Or certainly in the growing season, they might get a CalMag boost at the end of the session, or they might get a calcium nitrate boost and give them some extra calcium and nitrogen. But what I don't want to do is put those additives in at the beginning, because then they'll be in it over and over again, and I don't want to do that. So the general feed is what stays in there till I change the water. The additives go in at the end of that session, and then that water gets dumped and refreshed. So that's what I'm up to. Parts per million during the winter, around 180, 200. Come the summer, and this is the only what I call high feed, and that goes up to the 300 parts per million, possibly even higher. And I do start adding some other things. The mounted Phalaenopsis get chucked in there in the summer, the whole lot, plant and all. Don't worry about this flipping water in the leaf nodes. In this place in the summer they dry in an hour, So I don't worry about that. So there are some mounted orchids that get thrown in there as well, but it'll only be those that are really vigorously growing or those that can take that higher level of feed. The Vandas love it, but not all plants would. Some of the mounted orchids might consider that level of feed a little bit too high, and if they don't, I do. A little and often, but the Vandas get that higher level. Okay, so we'll have a go at what goes in that bucket when I've sorted the feed out. You don't want to watch me faff around with that, so I'll be back. Okay, I've faffed around with the feed. That's set at 200 parts per million of just MSU fertiliser, no additives or anything, and it will stay like that for a while. The pH was somewhere between 6.2, 6.3, which is sort of in the middle. Obviously I can't keep playing with the pH in there too much, because if I take it down to say 5.8, 5.9, I don't want to water everything at that pH throughout the life of that water, because I'd be excluding or at least limiting certain nutrients. So I'm aiming at the middle. And what I'll be doing when the water gets changed a bit more often in the summer, when I replenish it a bit more frequently, I will probably start with a higher end pH, 6.4, 6.5, and water like that for a while, then drop the pH down for a couple of waterings, yeah, then change the water. That way I can swing the pH but do it all in one go, not keep alternating, because it would be too much messing about and I'd end up with too much citric acid and bicarb in there by keep swinging it up and swinging it down in the same water. So that's what I'll be doing as we progress, but at the moment that feed will stay in there probably towards 15, 16, maybe even 17 days before I need some more water. But you have to bear in mind this time of year they're only getting put in there every third day, sometimes every fourth day. If we get a sequence of dull days, you know, they won't dehydrate so much. And what's in there at the moment are the two Rhicostylus giganteas that I must admit, since I put the lava rock in the basket, they have greened up. I wouldn't say they're still healthy looking plants, because they're not. But the larger one here is starting a new leaf. No sign of a new leaf on this one. Some of this damage on here, it's difficult to say what that was. Probably too much light. But nonetheless, they've greened up a bit. They are looking a little bit better. And I think it is the help that the lava rock's giving that set of roots, because they were just drying far too fast. Of course, this time of year they're not getting watered very often either. So the lava rock keeps those roots hydrated an awful lot longer, and the plants do seem to be improving a bit. But they need to bloom, or come the end of this year they'll be off somewhere else. And my Rhynchoridis Bangkok Sunset got caught out with the old light, didn't it? This is not a high light plant. It might be a vandaceous plant, but this one doesn't like the high light. It burns quite easy. And it was up in the roof to get the best light through the winter. But what I failed to appreciate was a few sunny days. So you can see the purple marking. It's not going to do the plant any harm, quite honestly. It's just a register of the light being too high. This one's also got a new leaf coming. No sign of any new roots on it. And in all the cases of that lot in there, 3 separate plants, not a hint of a flipping bloom spike. So anyway, we'll feed them and get them in the right light for those types of plants, which is nowhere near as high as normal Vandas, and we'll see how they progress as the growing season comes in. Certainly the Rhynchostylus should start feeling better in themselves as the warmer night temperatures come in. It's just too cold for those, they don't like it. But anyway, they're still alive, they're still growing, and they haven't dumped all their leaves, so we're not doing too bad with that little set. Now they'll sit in there for 15-20 minutes. If I get distracted, like doing lunch or something, they could be in there an hour. But it won't hurt them on the grounds that once they've hydrated and taken in all they can, they can't take in any more. You know, it takes a while for that. For the nutrients and the hydration in the roots to move up through the plant. That's not an instant, you know, thing. So once they're fully hydrated, they can't really get any more in there. until it moves up through the plant and the roots start to dry again. So how long they stay in there doesn't matter that much. But I usually give them 15 minutes at least, let's put it that way. And then as far as the Vandas are concerned, they just get thrown in, because they're bare rooted anyway. That one's easy because it fits in nicely and the roots go in and everything's fine. The other two are not so easy. This one's got a large wooden basket attached to it, and wood unfortunately floats. So when I put that one in, I have to put one of my water containers on top of the basket to make it sink, otherwise the top roots don't get hydrated. And then the last one, I'm not going to film all of them going in the buckets, a bit samey. The other Vanda up there is a nuisance for me, because the roots have grown out sideways in many directions rather than downwards, and as a consequence that has to go in the bucket sideways on, so I have to hydrate half the roots in one go and then turn it over the other way to hydrate the others. But that Vanda's not going to be my problem for too much longer, because somebody else is having that one. So as we get into March and the nighttime temperatures are not dropping down as low and postage becomes viable, that one's off to somebody else. But yeah, so that's how the Vanda bucket works. And as the warmer weather comes, and I've got guaranteed drying of plants, you know, during part of the day, some other plants will actually just get thrown in that water. Things like the mounted Phalaenopsis, the Tolumnias. There'd be quite a few things that can just get thrown in there, providing they can tolerate the higher levels of feed that will normally be in that bucket. And I might have to average that. You have to bear in mind, for most of this year I'm only going to have 2 Vandas. Should they get special attention, or can they just put up with a little less feed so that a lot more plants can get thrown in the bucket and get hydrated properly? Decision to be made a bit farther into the year, but that may well be the case. They will be getting fed very frequently, the Vandas. Come the warmer weather, you know, they'll be treated like the mounts. They'll go in the bucket every day, or at least every other day. So even though the feed might be a little low for them, they'll be getting plenty of it. I mean, I know places like Moats, you know, they water their plants every single day, but they're doing it with a hose. I doubt if they're getting fed every day, but they're definitely getting hydrated every day. So, yeah, I think, you know, the feed level can go down a bit perhaps for the 2 Vandas I'll have left. And that means a lot more plants can just get thrown in the bucket and get totally soaked. So they'll be getting a root feed and effectively a foliar feed at the same time. So they'll be getting a lot more nutrients into them. So that may well work better. But we'll see how we go. That's later down the line. I'm certainly not doing it this time of year in case the plants don't dry off. Because it will take longer, don't forget. You saw in yesterday's video how quickly I can water a mount. Well, if I'm going to throw it in a bucket to soak, okay, I can get several plants in at once, but to give them that soak, they've got to sit there. You know, and then they've got to come out before another set can go in. So it will increase my time. Not my workload, but my time. So I'll see what I think about that later in the year. So that's the last bit of the watering stuff and feeding stuff and feed levels and all that sort of stuff done once and for all. So I won't be covering that again for some considerable time. Thank goodness, I hear you say in the background. See you next time. Thanks for dropping by.